Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now for today's video I'm responding to a question I received some time ago about whether I have any Napoleonic war games in my collection, or indeed whether I play Napoleonics at all. And the answer to that is yes. I used to play a lot of Napoleonics back in the day, but after I sold my soul to the era of steam and shellfire and steel, I'm afraid I did let go of quite a bit of my collection. However, I do still have some favorites hanging around in there that have stayed with me because they're fun or there's something very special about the system. The usual reason most of us hang on to our war games. And the one I'm going to show you today was produced at around the turn of the millennium by a company, a US-based company called Eagle Games. Now, I don't know whether they still exist or whether they exist in modified form, but between about 1999 and 2001, Eagle Games produced three of what I consider their signature games. They were huge, and I mean literally they were huge. The first one was called War, Age of Imperialism and dealt with the latter half of the 19th century, all of the great powers, except for the United States, curiously, in a game that was manufactured by a US firm. They were going to produce an optional extra with the United States, but I don't think that ever came to fruition. The second game was called The American Civil War, and the third volume in the series, which also turned out to be the last, sadly, what I'm going to show you today, is called Napoleon in Europe. Now, those of you who are familiar with this game or might happen to have it will know full well that I am waving an empty box at you because the weight of this thing with all its stuff in it is immense. But as I say, true to form with Eagle Games, everything about it was big and beautiful. And there were some really innovative concepts in this. So let's start with the big and beautiful. And also let me say that with Napoleon in Europe, of the three titles I've just rattled off, this was the apogee in terms of gameplay and in terms of just sheer decorative awesomeness. And it also represented lessons that they had learned from the first two games. I mean, oddly enough, in terms of gameplay, and this is a bit tangential, but the American Civil War was probably the weakest of the three. And I think that's only because you had a conflict bound within a very large, but nonetheless still quite limited geographical area. War, Age of Imperialism, of course, gave you nearly the entire planet. Napoleon in Europe gives you the whole of Europe, surprisingly enough. So that's a view of the gorgeous, gorgeous map you get with this game. Now that looks big, doesn't it? I'm going to come back to this because the big bit is important. And as the game proudly says, you get, 564 game pieces, all of them shown their actual size. I mean, this is great. For a game that's actually quite simplistic in its basic rules, you get a lot of options. So you get standard infantry. Is that the gentleman over here? The gentleman with the banner is supposed to represent an army group. So if you've got so many miniatures that they can't physically occupy one of the regions on the map, then you can just hold them off map and have one of these cool banner guys up there. Of course, you've got artillery. You have elite infantry, read Imperial Guard, who doesn't love them. Cavalry, they come in two flavors, light and heavy, and if you play with the advanced rules, there's even more. There's irregular cavalry. There's also rules for militia with the infantry and also light infantry. And then you also get leaders, different stripes of, actually there's two cavalry pictures there, but you also get leaders. So you get lots of different types, even within the context of the basic game. And as you can see in the cross section, it's a big box. So what do you actually get in all of this? Well, the first thing I'm going to highlight is the rule book. because this is a wonderful thing. Now, it looks very thick. You know, I've been banging on about how this is actually a pretty straightforward game to play. There seems to be a lot to it. But I'll draw your attention, dear viewer, to these three tabs here. So the basic rules are really quite simple, and you can either play a generic risk type game using this system, or you can have a bit of historical flavor with historical setups. The real meat of the game is in the standard rules, which introduces a unit purchasing system and diplomacy, specific rules for diplomacy. In the basic game, you're just encouraged to talk to each other, make and break deals, whatever, as long as whatever you do doesn't contravene the rules. This formalizes it a bit more and makes it feel a little more Napoleonic. It also introduces some of the new units, like, you know, the specialized cavalry types and so forth. And it has a much more detailed tactical combat system. In the basic game, you just line your guys up in two ranks, and there's a bit of maneuvering, but otherwise you're chucking dice and blowing each other away. The advanced rules add the really nice stuff. And they also, I mean, while I'm at it, look at what a gorgeously well presented and well illustrated rule book this is. It's really nice. The rules are written in a very conversational tone. The rules are pretty clear, and they do nice examples of play, particularly of the tactical combat, which I appreciate, because you could learn how the tactical combat works just from this. But what I was going on about, what was exciting me earlier, was the bit at the end where you get historical scenarios. So that's the setup for scenario one, which is the end of the 1796 or thereabouts. Napoleon is about to make a name for himself. And you get about 10 scenarios. 10 is a pretty impressive number for a game like this. You can go all the way up to scenario 10, which is like a post-Napoleonic free-for-all set in about the early 1820s, so it ain't over yet. So that is the rule book. Really nice, really easy to handle, beautifully presented. You can take this game at whatever pace you like. Even if you're an experienced grognard, you can play a basic game if you're pressed for time. Other components, we have counter sheets, which I'm amazed I still have these, because I bought this game in 2002. So I mean, the fact that I've not punched all these out, I suppose it makes it easier to demo them. So you've got your control markers here. I like the artwork. I like the national flags tied into the unit colors. That's very nice. There's a couple of markers for specialized units. The idea is that you punch these out, and I mean, that's light infantry. That's light infantry. And the assumption is you just have your soldier standing on top of his counter to denote light infantry. You also have ships. Now, I love the ships. The artwork on them, if this focuses, is really, really cool. It's a nice, you know, first-rate ship of the line. The only slight disappointment I had is that, if I tilt my camera a bit, everything you get in this game box is glorious, glorious armies in plastic. But you don't get plastic ships. I really wanted plastic ships. I mean, I know what everyone's thinking. If I feel that strongly about it, I can just go and buy myself some plastic ships, right? And there are some nice manufacturers out there who produce them for not very much. But I think these are what came with the game, so I'll use them. They do avoid problems with map clutter. I will give them that, and maybe that was what was behind the decision. What else have we got in here? More cardboard. So there's a nice summary player aid of the basic game. This thing is great. You can have it out on the table. Of course, you've got your turn tracker there. All the need to know rules nicely summarized. On the other side, you have its equivalent for the standard and advanced rules. And as you can see, things have got a lot more complex. You've still got your turn track, which is tied to the years of the Napoleonic Wars. But you've also got a diplomatic display now where you can track who's at war with who, who's at peace with whom, who's got an alliance with who. This is a really handy visual aid. And then you've got production points as well. So it ramps up the detail in several important respects. And then here we've got the reference card for the standard rules in terms of how units fight, what you do with your political actions. That's tied into the diplomatic chart that I just showed you. So that, again, really handy. It summarizes all the rules you need to know. There's a couple of things that are not mentioned here, but they're very situational, and you can always look at the rule book to remind yourselves. With the advanced rules. Now, that's a little bit confusing because some of what's here is not strictly advanced rules. They're also the standard ones, but it does remind you of the extra units that come in with the advanced rules, and also the game cards. Now, the cards are a very interesting mechanic. You get a deck of very beautifully made cards, but unlike a lot of card-driven games. In fact, I won't say this game is card-driven. I'd call it card-assisted. You use the cards in the basic game, but you only use the bottom bit. They've got a risk-like mechanism where if you get certain card combinations, you can cash them in for reinforcements, a lot like you do in Risk. But in the basic game, you completely ignore the card text, which has different game effects. In the standard game, oddly enough, you don't use cards at all because their role is basically superseded by the production function, and that is based on how much territory you control. In the advanced game, cards come back because all of a sudden you have these effects like complete rout, something that messes your opponent up in the wake of a defeat on the battlefield. You get random events like attrition in Russia and Spain, extra casualties for the other guy. You even helpfully have a couple of blank cards if you want to make your own rules up or do some extra cool stuff. I really like that. And the final bit with the cards, and these are also only introduced in the advanced game, you have innovations like levée en masse here, which are specific to certain countries, and you can introduce them at their historic times. So levée en masse, I don't know if you can see the dates on the bottom of the cards. The print is a bit fine, and in this light, I don't know, but it basically says France can do levée en masse from 1796, Austria from 1809, and Prussia from 1813. And there are enough copies of all of the innovation cards for each player to have one. So that's really useful as a reminder. It just shows how incredibly well thought out this aspect of the game was. And I like how some versions of the game use the cards and others don't. It's another option that you have as a player. Another great feature that this game introduced is the battle board. Now, it wouldn't be the linear combat that we all love so much from the Napoleonic age if you didn't have a, left flank, right flank, center, a reserve area and a retreat area. And it looks good. I like the aesthetic of this thing. What really made this shine for me, metaphorically rather than literally, sorry, I know it's got a bit of a reflection there, is when this was published, there's a bit in the rule book saying that this battle system is compatible with the two previous games. Now, in War Age of Imperialism, and to a degree in the American Civil War, it was basically just line your guys up and shoot. But I think it's great that they incorporated rules in this game to allow you to port that onto the other two. Now, I never did get round to trying using this with the other two games, but I've got them, so I really should. But this has always been with my Napoleonic set because it fits. Now, one component has been conspicuous by its absence so far, and if you're wondering, map. I am going to get to the map. Do you remember the gorgeous picture I showed you on the reverse of the box? It just because it's worth doing, I'm going to show you this amazing map. Does that convey a sense of the scale of this wonderful thing? You probably think it does if you've never seen this game before, but I think those of you who have seen it before will know what's coming. Bear in mind how much you have there. And now look at this. Uh-huh. Look at that. And look at this. Nope, this is not a Kickstarter deluxe version. This was the whopping great monster you received in the game. And I'm going to stand, I've never done this in a video before, but I've never showcased a game with a footprint this size before. I'm going to stand back and embarrass myself by getting the folds wrong. Bear with. Here we go. So I am holding in my hot little hands 1/3 of the map. Oops, and I'll throw it on the floor now. So yeah, that was 1/3 of the map, and that's the middle, obviously. I would, just in case I really do drop it, I won't flop the middle bit out. But you can just see the enormous size of this game. This game has a presence. And as I say, this was a feature of these three Eagle Games products. They were going big and bold and huge. And what I liked about them at the time was that if you did play the basic game, you had a game that was massive. People's jaws would hit the floor if they'd never seen anything this big before. But it was so simple. It was, you know, behind all the lovely geographical exactitude, it was basically a move and fight game. You know, in the basic game, all you have to remember is every unit moves one region, unless they're leaders or cavalry, and then they move two. And then when you bring, you know, each turn, all you're doing basically is move, fight, build. So the games actually would move pretty quickly. And because of the options you had, because you could choose whether to play a sort of, we're going to fight to the death game, or you could set a certain number of turns, say 12, or you could, you know, do a sudden death. You know, there's options in the rule book for ending the game with a dice roll, you know, so end of every turn you roll 2 dice, and as the game progresses, the target number for ending gets closer and closer. So lots and lots of options. What this game gave you really in essence was and the other two do this too, is a themed template which really feels good for the period. And which also promises lots of fun or lots of serious deep thought, or a combination of the two, depending on what you go for. So there we go. That is it was meant to be a quick introduction to this game. Sorry, guys, and I hope that answers a part of the original question, which was, do you have any Napoleonic stuff? Yes, I do. So, of course, following my now well-established pattern, the very next step is going to be showing you guys how the game works. And that is going to be the subject of the next video. What I will do, because as I say, it's quite a straightforward game, rather than bombarding you with lots of videos showing basic, standard, advanced, I might just set up an advanced scenario and just play it through, or sorry, the thought has only just occurred to me. I could set up an advanced scenario, but I can play a turn with the basic rules, a turn with the standard rules, and then maybe do an extra with some of the advanced bolted on. I'll see how it goes, but Yeah, maybe that latter idea was a bit better. So you see, this is terrible planning. Just like, no, rather than sitting down and deciding what I'll do in a measured fashion, I'll just talk to you guys about it and jump on whatever feels good. Feel free to comment if you'd rather see one or the other. But anyway, getting ahead of myself with that one. Um, Thank you so much for watching this, as ever, guys. I hope you found it interesting. For those of you who were fans of Eagle Games back in the day and played or loved or owned or all of the above, these monsters, I hope it's been a pleasant initial trip down memory lane. But yeah, I hope that you've enjoyed this, whether you've never heard of Eagle Games before or whether you're a bit of an Eagle Games veteran or collector. And as always, thank you very much for your company. It's really, really appreciated. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Take care till then. Bye.